This panel will be moderated by Mr. Sanjeev Gupta, MD and CEO for Lahari. To say a few words about Sanjeev, basically Sanjeev is the MD and CEO of Lahari, world-class advanced electronics testing facility. He's also the CEO of KDEM, Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, whose charter is to bridge the gap between industry and the government to grow digital economy in the state. With more than 25 years of vast experience with the Indian industry, he started his career as an assistant professor with the University of Delhi. Later, he has joined the Government of India as a bureaucrat. He's been an ISS topper and served for more than a decade as a bureaucrat. He's been a senior executive at IBM. He was the MD of Accenture, handling India and South Asia business. He was also country general manager for Microsoft India. He's on various boards and council members of COEs and others. He's honorary doctorate from YS University, United States, and also has 3 postgraduate degrees, including MBA from FMS. He has many other qualifications, huge list of things. He's also a member of Academic Council, Delhi Technical University. So a whole host of qualifications as well as honors from various organizations. So Sanjeev and the panel, we apologize for the delay. We know we've had a very long delay today and also technical difficulties. But hopefully we have plenty of audience who are still logged into the platform and are very excited to listen to you. So I thank the panel for their patience, apologize for the delay, and hand it over to you, Sanjeev, for taking the panel forward.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction. I'm very excited to be part of this panel, looking at the Esdm sector growth journey in India and evenly across the states in the country. And I'm so happy to have a very powerful panel with me, great entrepreneurs, the industry leaders, and I will not waste my single time to introduce the great panelists that I have with me today. Let me just pick up someone who has been in the industry for the last 35 years, Mr. Sanjeev Keskar. Thank you, Sanjeev ji, for joining us today. Sanjeev Keskar is the CEO of Urban Consultancy, over 35 years of corporate career, heading 5 American companies, National Semi, AMD, Freescale Semi, PMC, and Aero Electronics. Sanjeev is currently now supporting Make in India projects and startups in Esdm sector. Thank you so much for joining Sanjeev ji today. We have another personality, which is Mr. Girish Kamal. Mr. Girish Kamal is a senior director and country head of sales automotive at Infineon Technologies. And everybody heard about the company Infineon in a great way. He has the automotive sales, OEM business development, and application engineering teams located in Bangalore, Pune, and Delhi. He has a large customer focus, global customers and startups in the automotive semiconductor domain. Girish has over 25 years of experience, primarily looking at the global experience also prior to joining the Infineon. He was in USA from 1996 to 2010 and worked in USA at Fisher Dynamics and TRW in various engineering and sales leadership roles. An MBA from Michigan State University, MS in Mechanical Engineering from Texas Tech University, BE Mechanical from UVC Bangalore. Pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Girish. We have a first-time entrepreneur, but shaping the complete EMS industry on the global map now. We have Mr. Ramesh Kannan, President and Managing Director, Keynes Technology. Mr. Ramesh is the promoter of Keynes Technologies and a first-generation entrepreneur, an engineering graduate with over 27 years of experience in the EMS space. He's a leader and a visionary who has been instrumental in ushering world-class manufacturing concepts to India and is well respected in the industry as well as in the government for bringing a positive change in the landscape of electronics manufacturing. So nice to have you, Mr. Ramesh, with us today. And I look forward for a very deeper discussion on the Esdm sector with you. We have Dr. Sriram. Dr. Sriram is the CEO of Semra Technologies Private Limited. Dr. Sriram has 36 years of professional experience and a proven business leader. He held leadership positions at various other organizations like Shanti Gears Limited, St. Corbin, Rani Group, Sunaraman Fasteners, and etc. and he served on the board of listed entities as well. Dr. Sriram has a BTech from IIT Madras, MS and PhD from North Carolina State University, US. During his years in the US, he also worked for the prestigious Los Alamos and Oak Ridge National Labs. He's also a published poet. Great to have you with us. I don't think so that any industry that I have met so far has a great poet as well, and an avid blogger. So nice to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining. We have Mr. Shivraj Dharma.
Hi.
Shivraj Dharma is currently the Director of Design Engineering Global Foundries. He is in India's site leader for technology-enabled team at Center of Excellence, Bangalore. His team is responsible for developing IP, FIP, memories, test shapes, and RF benchmarking circuits for global foundries. Very well connected for today's demand on semiconductor as well. So good to have you with us. He has earlier served in prestigious high-tech MNCs like Motorola and Intel. He is an adjunct faculty at BITS Plani, BITS Hyderabad, NIT Goa, IIT Tirupati. I don't know, many more names are there. We have to repeat many names there. He has over 28 years of experience in training, teaching, and analog, mixed signal IP development from specification to final system level validation. And I'm very happy to share that he has 10 approved US patents on his name. So great to have him on board today. Apart from this, he's also a Vedic literature student and doing research on how the ancient technologies like rainwater harvesting, nanometal particles, natural housing processing of mercury, etc., can be used in the industry and on a common service as well. I'm so excited to have you all with me today, and I'm pretty sure that today's Esdm sector discussion will lead us to a new directional approach from the India perspective. The audience today is from across the India, looking at us to say, hey, how do we define the Esdm sector? And before I took up the number of questions and number of statements that I have in my mind, I just want to flesh out a couple of pointers and a slide which can set the context in terms of where we are for an Esdm and what we're looking at to shape up from the country perspective. So let me just open the slide for all of you, and from there we can just pick it up some of the elements that we have to discuss today. I hope everybody is able to see my slide. A nod of yours will be great helpful to me. Thank you so much. Thank you. If you see the Esdm, I think if 1 trillion digital economic growth, as our Honorable Prime Minister is saying, Esdm plays a very critical role, a very crucial role. Why? Because one of the top 3 global economies in terms of the digital consumers, India is that. And if you see from the exports that we are, or imports we are doing both data, the export data talks about of $200 billion to be import data to be $200 billion soon. It's a burden for us. It's a really burden for us from both the procurement and dependencies and also the forex. And if you also see from what government of India and the state governments are doing today is to completely looking at designing a policies for incentivize, attract investments at the both levels, from the component level to the end consumer product level, and as well as set up a semiconductor fab. Very active discussions are on today in India on this field. And Karnataka, leading state, as you all know, has been a very second largest chip design hub. Around 85 chip designing companies are there in Bangalore itself. And if any state which has rolled out some of the initiatives in terms of innovation centers, skilling centers, and dedicated Esdm clusters, Karnataka is one of the states here. So if you see from the perspective of the Esdm side of the story, you find that yes, there is a movement, but there is a challenge as well of $200 billion of import that's going to come in. And then currently, these are the projections which has been led by some of the great researchers done by the IBF, which talks about of how the CAGR is going for a proper electronics industry. We have almost $540 billion of electronics industry in India, and under which Esdm is looking at a big number of approximately 220, but I estimate $300 billion of market space for us. India, as today is exporting a very small amount of 11.7 billion only, whereas our imports are $200 billion. Well, ISA, as per their report, they're saying around 90% semiconductor companies globally, and I think we all agree with this figure, that all the semiconductor design companies are in India, but unfortunately, semiconductor manufacturing is not there in India. So how do we figure this out in terms of our discussion today? We'll focus on that. And if you see the Esdm divided two segments, today 22% of the Esdm market size is contributed by the design companies, and around 78% is contributed by the electronic system companies. Pillars of Make in India, Digital India, Startup India has been flourishing from both at a central level and state level to ensure that we are now growing these percentages to more of the component level, to more of the semiconductor level as well. If I see the 78% contribution in the Esdm. Major systems, these are the areas where you find high drivers. I might ask later on with the panelists to validate this or figure it out, something we have missed out or something we need to add upon. But these are the areas where we see the huge amount of opportunity coming in place in the Esdm. Some of the very important drivers that we see in India today are threefold. One is looking from the policy support perspective, and both from the government of India level as well as the state governments across the country, we find a huge amount of policy benefits schemes are coming out, specs, component benefits, EMC 2.0, and etc. Another element of driver is the demand side driver. If you see the way the 5G telecom is going to happen, the way the IoT is going to work upon, I think that machine-to-machine talking will be much more than what we're looking at man-to-machine talking. And in that scenario, the largest component which comes of the growth journey is of any segment, be it automobile, defense, aerospace, medtech, is nothing else but electronics. The third pillar of the driver growth is the investments that we see. And then FDI is growing up, the third largest startup ecosystem that we have in India today under the Esdm segment. I think these are the drivers which is helping us to look at the potential of India. Some of the very important advantages for us, we are already there. If you see, the Bangalore tops the startup ecosystem in India, right? So robust demand is there. And if you see the government of India looking at 18,000 crores to invest in the electronics manufacturing by government alone, it's not including the private investments. Private investments is more than 10 times of this. Then policy support from the PLI schemes, looking at estimation of how do we increase the foreign companies' production to approximately $12 billion and domestic approximately equal to the same amount. We have a competitive advantage of a national policy on electronics is looking at around $400 billion domestic manufacturing, and this is the number that we have title talks about of how do we look at $400 billion of manufacturing as a turnover coming in place from the Esdm segment. Karnataka has been a very leading state, and I'm very happy to share with you all that because of the great quality talent pool, because of the infrastructure, because of the ease of doing business in Karnataka, because of the very open bureaucracy that we have, and the industry's participation in defining the incentives and policies, the leading companies are already set up here, creates a positive environment in the state like Karnataka for the investment in Esdm. I was just looking at some of the data from what's happened today. And 19 companies has filed under the PLI scheme till March 2021. And out of this, if you see from the next 4 years, I'm looking at around $20 billion of IT hardware companies only in this field being in place. Not only this, it's the companies are also looking at tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India, where we will be able to focus upon more of the investment going because the talent is there as well. And I was just going through a discussion with someone, he said, today, industries goes to the talent, not talent comes to the industry. Now, that's the new dimension which has come across post-COVID area as well, in terms of how do we redefine the strategy of location when we see the growth of an Esdm. None of the least, in any today's sector, the startup becomes a very important element. Any company, if in an ERD, looks at where the startup ecosystem is available. And fortunately, India is a very emerging area in terms of startup. And if you see, we are the fourth largest ecosystem for startups, followed by US, China, and UK. And I think this is a very proud moment for all of us. And obviously, Bangalore occupies the highest area, which is around 24%, and next to Mumbai, which is 12%, and Delhi and others. But all these things, and if you see what IS is saying is about is today, that set up a target of an incubating 100 startup by alone IS alone. There are many other center of excellences which are working, which are helping to set up this. Some of the schemes which I was just talking about of EMC 2.0, PLI, EDF, export benefits, AMSIF's modified version of this SIF scheme. And all of these are also added by state level policies. For example, Karnataka has come out with their own specs models. 1% of the PLI over and above what government of India is saying, supply of the talent side of the story, which is there. Setting up of Karnataka digital economy mission is to ensure that you are having an edge in terms of facilitation and bridging the gap between industry and the government. All of these are more than this, what you see on the screen today. If also good is happening around, then I think we need to pick up a question to us that how do we reach out to $400 billion market space? I think the government is trying level best, industry is trying the level best, what we just saw in the numbers. But more important comes up is what is challenging us? What are the areas that we need to look at it up? Sorry.
I think that was the last page.
You on the last page?
Yeah, I think it was this up to this was the last page. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a second. Okay, thank you. I think we have looked into some of these data points and find out that how do we see the Esdm growing? And I'm having a little puzzle here. Great talent, great spread across the country, a lot of clusters, a lot of policy benefits. So let me open the floor for the panelists. And I'll go through one by one. And my first question to all the panelists is, in your experience from the industry that you have been looking at, in the areas of your experience and network and the global exposure that you bring in, what are the important opportunities that you see under the Esdm sector today in India? And if you look at this question that we can able to find out one by one, then we can note it down. These are the potential areas of opportunities, or so to say drivers, which can help us to grow. So let me just pick up from, as I was introducing the panelists itself, Mr. Sanjeev, if you can, start from you, and then we can move on to the other speakers as well. Over to you, Mr. Sanjeev.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Hello, everyone. As Mr. Gupta explained, opportunities in Esdm sector are across all verticals. We are seeing smartphone, mobile phone, we are consuming more than 300 million units. Data centers are growing. IT hardware requirement, IT infrastructure requirement is growing. 5G telecom revolution, GPON, fiber optic connectivity across rural India, as well as private operators like Airtel, Reliance, they are deploying fiber across India. So broadband connectivity and telecom networks is going to be another huge growth drivers. All the appliances are becoming smart. Everything is becoming connected. IoT and AI-based control systems is going to be another huge opportunity. Let's talk about industrial segment. All your utility meters like energy meters, water meters, gas meters, everything is becoming connected and smart. That is fueling another huge demand. Solar inverter or inverter UPS power supply, chargers, that is again in power segment is fueling another huge growth opportunity. We are experts on automotive, so I will not talk about automotive. But if we really look at India's story today, then all verticals are a very high growth segment. Means whatever numbers we are talking about, it is going to be a double-digit growth CAGR over the next 5 to 6 years. The biggest opportunity, I will say, is how we can really improve on the local value addition in electronics. Because already with PLI scheme, we are seeing huge manufacturing activity has taken up on a very large scale across all segments. Now, the next thing we have to see is about how we can really capitalize on the value addition in Esdm sector. So I will stop here and I will share a few more points at a later questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. No, I agree with you. The telecom, the energy, the utility segment, and the 5G telecom, especially, is creating up a huge amount of driver. Thank you so much. Let me just ask a similar question to Mr. Girish as well. How do you see, what are the different opportunities, Girish?
Thank you, Sanjeevji. Thank you for having me on the panel. So automotive, I think, we are seeing in the news and hearing a lot, of what's going on today in the industry for the shortage. Yeah, some of the big drivers that we saw. First thing was, if you say last year in April, the BS6 emission requirements. So this was one of the starting drivers for the increase in the amount of electronics that we actually have in all our vehicles. You know, we went from a carburetor to an engine ECU that you also showed, Sanjeev ji, during your initial slides. Yeah, the engine ECUs need a lot more electronics. So regulations drove it. Secondly, the regulations of safety. You know, all cars needs to have, you know, ABS, as well as they need to have airbags. And every OEM, every manufacturing company wants to differentiate. So they want to offer more features in terms of safety. So on one side, you had regulations that drove, say, for example, in terms of emissions, as well as in terms of safety. The next one is, as you see in India, you know, with growth comes prosperity and the need for more comfort, the need for more devices. And as Sanjeev ji also talked about, you know, 300 million phones. You know, during when we were growing up, having a mobile phone, having a regular phone with, you know, the dial at home was a prestige issue. Today, you see, everybody has 2, 3 phones, you know, coming out of different pockets. And this is giving rise to what has happened is you want to emulate what you're seeing in your homes, in your vehicles, because also, you know, the side effects of that is we spend a lot more time in our cars or on our bikes today than we did a few years back. You know, commuting from home to work or anywhere else takes at least 3, 4 times the time. And so you're looking for more comfort features. And what this added is this resulted in a lot more need for electronics. And as a result, you know, more electronics means more opportunity for the Esdm with Atmanirbhar and Make in India plan, a lot more investments going in to do that. Then finally, what we are seeing is transitioning now from ICE engines to electric vehicles. And this is also something that is also causing the need for a lot more electronics in vehicles and a lot of more opportunities in the Esdm sector for manufacturing and catering to the needs. So I think we're looking at very, very good times going forward. And definitely, I think as a semiconductor manufacturer, we really look forward to serving this industry and India becoming more going to become a mainstream for all the global manufacturers to look at, because the market is very huge and the penetration is getting much deeper and wider. So definitely, I think an opportunity, Sanjeev ji.
Thank you, Mr. Girish. Completely agree, and I really like the one you said about the dial phone towards more of 3 phones, and from every pocket 1 phone is coming out. But the way the electron is used in the telecom, the way the electrons will use in the car, I think it will be 10 times bigger if you compare in terms of the demand in the cars stuff, especially in the EV side of the story. Completely agree. Let me just turn this to question to Mr. Ramesh. You have been into the EMS from last so many decades, and it's cut across from various sectors looking from the EMS side. How do you see in future the ESDM is going to grow in India? What will be the major opportunities for growing this? In which area do you find a growth journey?
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, panelists all. See, I look at it from this angle. The major drivers for this industry are increasing demand of electronic components and devices for smartphones, tablets. This is because accelerated data traffic volume leading to development of high-speed communication network in developed and developing economies. A rapid growth on consumer electronics, including white goods in emerging economies as a result of large youth population and increasing middle class, is also driving the growth of overall electronics market. Again, we have new technologies such as Internet of Things, robotics technology, and artificial intelligence are driving smart hardware, handheld diagnostic machines, leading machine learning and industry 4.0 migration. This in turn will open huge opportunities to ESDM sector. Again, clean energy is also picking up. Electronic vehicles as an alternate to current energy segments. Geographical shift of manufacturing from China will also benefit the ESDM sector. This is what my feeling is.
I completely agree. And I think I saw all the panelists were nodding their head and saying that, look, I think what you're making is absolutely correct, especially the topic that you turn around from the pure play of electronics towards more of how the new dimension of electronics like AI, robotics, machine learning is getting inbuilt into every part of the manufacturing system. And then you shift it towards the dimension of the industry 4.0. And then everywhere you find that the automation is taking place, the artificial intelligence is being applied into manufacturing line itself in terms of how do we streamline this and process. Very interestingly, you also talked about clean energy, and I will love to come back to this a little bit more because this is an area which I think a lot of innovation is still going to happen more. As we move towards EV, another side of the story, the clean energy will come into place. And renewable energy sources will be looked into more, and there in turns look into more of the electronics components playing a very vital role. But let me take this up a little bit later with your clean energy. Let me just move on to Dr. Sriram. How do you see, sir, this area of ESDM from your lens?
Okay. Yeah, some very excellent points from my fellow panelists. So I don't want to repeat what they said. I completely agree with them. You saw me nodding my head, of course. I want to take it a little, back to the ground a little bit or back to basics a little bit. You look at electronics, it's an aspirational product, right? Most of it is an aspirational product. And when you look at how the aspirers are growing in India, there are about 250 to 300 million households in India, out of which about 64 million make up the aspirers, affluent, and the elite. And this is going to double. This is going to go from 64 million in the next 3 to 5 years to about 110 million. So right there, you've got the opportunity. You're almost going to double the number of aspirers in the country, and you're going to double. The others are going to go more than double, in fact. So this is where the opportunity space really opens up. When people talk about exponential. So if you're wondering where it's coming from here, and it's of course driven by the GDP growth and the aspirational growth of the country, because we are a very young country. We are probably median age of 25, 26. So that is, just park that aside for a second, and I'll give you some other figures. If you look at the number of personal computers in India, penetration wise, it's currently at 15.4 per 1,000 people. Comparatively, China itself is at about 41. US is at about 781. So even if we halve the gap between us and China in the next 3 to 5 years, we are adding another, 4-5 crores worth of, or 50 million PCs, personal computers to the system. Forget about mobile phones, forget about everything else. Just tablets, laptops, desktops, you're adding 50 million of those. I'll give you another statistic. If you look at the AC penetration in India, and in a hot country like us, hot, humid country like ours, you would expect a lot, right? It is 40 per 1,000 today. While Indonesia is 80 per 1,000, China is 500 something per 1,000. Singapore is 700 per 1,000. We are still the babies, we are. What it says is, I'm not trying to laugh at where we are as a country. I'm saying, look at the opportunity space that can really open up. Even if we reached a level of Indonesia, we are adding another 50 million air conditioners to the ecosystem. Already we have started talking about power cuts, but I'm saying this is the opportunity space that is available. And why am I talking about air conditioning? It's a mechanical device, but today it's more and more and more a smart air conditioner. It's an inverter-based air conditioner, because those are the ones that are going to get the star rating as we go forward, which means a lot of electronics, both in the outside unit and the inside unit. So we are just scratching the surface when we talk about automotive, and of course there are multiple domains that are going to grow: electric vehicles, narrowband IoT, IT hardware, you name it. But I'm saying, just to talk about two things, I've shown you what can happen to your country or our country in the next 3, 5, 10 years. Because in terms of penetration, we have penetrated very little. And as the top 3 of the pyramid grow in size, which is going to double, I already said that, from 60 million households, we're going to have 110 million households becoming aspirers or affluent. So you're really looking at an awesome combination of where opportunity meets aspiration. So that's quickly what I want to say, and then I'll wait for further questions from you, Sanjeev.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Mr. Sriram. Your number 10 just gives me a calculation that our calculation of $300 billion is very small. Because the way you're talking about of millions of households, and every household consumes so much number of electronics product.
Exactly.
I see that 300 billion is a very small number. Well, let me put up some other time a simulation model to see what number will look like. But very interesting facts about the PC, the AC, the grassroots level. And then from there, the other dimensions of the industrial, goes up to the market space. Thank you for bringing this point, because most of the industries look at from their sector perspective, and you brought a perspective very differently from the household demand, which can multiply and impact to the industrial growth as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think, we are here to also look at Mr. Shivraj, to see what he is looking at from a center of excellence and other perspective to see what is the growth at Esdm for us. Over to you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I think we are aware that India as a design, we are doing extremely well. 90% of the top MNCs are here. What I feel is, for a manufacturing perspective, we have been talking from years, but nothing has materialized so far. So based on my experience working in Motorola, Intel, and what is emerging right now, what I feel is there is a clear opportunity in a domain, very specific domain in the semiconductor manufacturing called silicon photonics. So what is happening is, up to VLSI I've been talked a long time, but this is just happening, and I can see in next 3 to 4 years, $10+ billion opportunity. Even big companies like Intel, they are not there today to say they have stable silicon photonics technology. So I think it is a great idea if Indian government can work with the companies like maybe Global Foundries, where they have the IBM legacy, they have very good knowledge on silicon photonics, but this is yet to mature. So we can jump into such areas where upcoming and huge potential, because now how much video we are looking at it, and bandwidth is requirement is increasing like anything, and silicon photonics is a solution. And I have a small team which is already making huge impact, and they are saying where is the pipeline. So I was trying to talk to the IIT professors in different IITs in India. I figured it out that there are more than 40 PhD students working in silicon photonics today in India, and many more in MTech and all that. So seeing that pipeline and seeing the desire for the Indian government to really invest in the semiconductor manufacturing, I can see that silicon photonics is a big opportunity for India to really invest, because we cannot compete with hundreds of billions of dollars investment placed by Intel, TSMC, Samsung, and US government is putting $50 billion this year. So I think with very small investment, but taking a very key area like silicon photonics, I think we have a great opportunity to really make inroads, use our IIT talent, and really invest in that area. That's what I think is a really area which can make a difference for and make India shine, is what I feel.
Lovely. This is like innovation and invention both ways. Where how do we bring out a product line or a component line which is bottom but very critical, very important. And the global investors are a different kind. They have billions of dollars to invest, but unfortunately not coming to India, right? And how do we fill this gap through different alternatives? And that is what you brought it out from an opportunity perspective for an Esdm segment as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Shivraj. We got a dimension of where we are leading to, from a sector specific to technology specific, household specific. I see that a lot of efforts that have been done today. If you compare for the last decade and last 5 years itself, we might say, let's say $40 billion has been spent in startup in the last decade or so. But you will imagine that $32 billion has been coming to startup in the last 4 years. That means the way the pace is changing, and this is coming from where? It's coming in merging on the hardware and software both, as I was showing in my slide. Industry is doing a lot. Government is from across central government and the state government is doing plenty of things. My next question to all of you is one by one to see what do you see that the government is right now doing right thing and industry is also supporting them in the same way. So could be areas like what industry is doing, could be in areas what government is doing to grow this ESDM segment today. Because we hear from a lot of people that industry is doing a good job. From an industry lens, overall, we don't see that perspective. And we see, okay, government has initiated policy, but actually the meaning of policy, or does it benefit to the policy or not? Is it impacting the industry or not? Is what I would love to hear from all of you. So the question is that how do you see the government industry is supporting the growth of ESDM now? Do you really find that example for it? So let me just take up with Sanjeevji first of all you.
Thank you. Again, a lot of action we have seen in last 4 to 5 years, particularly to support ESDM. All of us know that production linked incentive scheme, electronics manufacturing system, EMC 2.0. What I think, that we have linked this PLI scheme to volumes. We should also link it to the value addition, because that will help to build not only the manufacturing ecosystem, but even the component manufacturing ecosystem, plus design ecosystem. So it will actually help if we link this incentive to the value addition. It will help to grow the overall value addition in the ESDM space. Another interesting thing government came up 5 years back was preferential market access. And we have not really leveraged that to the full extent. See, even global companies can participate into government tender, but they have to show minimum 30% local value addition and they have to manufacture in India for that. So at every state government tender and every central government tender of electronics, be it a energy meter tender or be it a desktop PCs or laptops or any BSNL infrastructure, if we strongly leverage the preferential market access to attract global investment to create manufacturing in India, that's something we should add very strongly. PMA should be implemented very strictly at state government as well as central government level. That's what I think. But all the policies like PLI and EMC 2.0 are really welcome. It is helping big time to ESDM sector.
Thank you, Sanjeevji. I will pick up this PMA a little bit one more time with you when I go for a challenges stuff little later. But it's a great idea to attract the global companies if we have a really robust engine to define the journey of a PMA. Because we know PMA is there, but how do we leverage that? What is the government are doing into this? Respective state governments also participating into this process and then giving really good benefit for manufacturing in India. I think that's the point of making a pretty good point. Thank you so much. Let me just turn around to Mr. Girish. Sir, over to you. How do you see industry and government both doing something good for the industry, for the ESDM growth?
Definitely, for example, what we can look at, I know Sanjeevji already talked about PLI. One of the things that we have seen which the government has initiated in the last few months is the CHIMS program, or which is basically the Chips Import Monitoring System. For multiple HS codes, they're basically asking all the importers, basically manufacturers of electronics, ESDM companies, to basically register this information that is coming in. And I think in a way, this is really a good aspect, because what it's giving them is very good data of what is the need going to be today and in the future, where the government should actually focus and put their money in, rather than trying to get into things because it's low technology or low investment, which will not add value in the end. Like Sanjeevji said, is to look at something where you have the data, but similarly what China did a few decades back. They found out what really was needed in the country, which was from this is to be invaluable, because you're not talking, you're not speculating, you actually have information based on which you can actually make the investments, attract the right companies to come in and focus, and also you have the information for the companies which the government is able to provide with data which is neutral. There is really no ambiguity in that. That's something that would really help. And like PLI scheme, what Sanjeevji talked about, I can talk specifically in automotive. I think the government has about 26,000 crores, which they plan to allocate over the next 5 years. And what we see here is the focus is very different. It's very clear where the direction it's headed. It is focusing more on the new cleaner technologies, that you adhered to also earlier. It's not focused as much on the ICE engines, but say mainly on hydrogen fuel cells and EV vehicles. So basically to promote these technologies to have a large portion of the vehicle roadmaps, be it two-wheelers, passenger vehicles, or any segments by 2030. I think this is going on. Still a little bit clarity required from the government, which we're still waiting for, and also to understand how is this affecting the components that actually go into these. I think this would be something that my learned panelists, I think, would offer a lot more insight to than I would. So thank you, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Girish. Thank you so much. I think the data-driven policy and data-driven decision-making by the government will really transform the growth journey for us. And the reason you articulated very well, because if we know that what types of chips we are getting imported for different variety of reasons, and then we can put up the money to the right organization to come and put up a policy and incentives for that domain of the company to come in, it will help us to bridge the gap quickly and the ROI will be much, much higher. So, your linking to the system of setting up this chips, already set it up, chipped, imports monitoring system as well is a good example. Your EV side of the story, which is a very interesting one and a clean energy one. And before I go to the next one, my small question to you is, do you really see that, the EV segment, which is growing very fast, is industries also attempting towards changing their product line towards more of the, all automobile sector of industries are transforming themselves to more of EVs and bringing more of electronics into the system? Or still there are some industries who feel that, no, we'll wait for some more incentives to come and then we'll decide what to do and etc. How do you see this industrial part of participation into this?
I think, Sanjeev, it's a very mixed bag. You have some, for example, the current players, right, who've invested a lot of money into ICE engines, the transition over to BS6. For them, it's not that easy to change course immediately. And what we are seeing is a lot of these startups coming in, which you can say not having too much of baggage. For them, it's been a lot easier to transition. But what we are seeing that the pace is slowly picking up everywhere. And also a lot of the existing automotive OEMs are also investing in these startups. For example, be it Ather or Torque or all of these they have invested for them to basically also be able to do this transition much easier. So definitely it is transitioning. It's going to take time because it's not just, producing an EV, but also a lot of other supporting ecosystem that you need to go along with it. Be it in terms of fast charging, for example, you can fill your tank and within 3 to 5 minutes and get out. But unless I'm going to be able to do the same in about 5 minutes, nobody is going to be able to put it overnight or wait for a few hours to have their vehicles charged to go on. So these are, I think, certain challenges. Definitely the industry is working towards solving a lot of these, and it will see, it's going to be slow, but I think we would see an exponential penetration once, people buy into it and then it gets picked up.
Correct. Completely agree with you. And I think this is where the industrial is also trying to, bridge the innovation at the startup level for especially the challenges like your, charging stations. How do I get it my EV charge in 5 minutes rather than just waiting for an hour overnight and do this size? Thank you for this point. This gives a positive impact in terms of the industry is also looking at transforming their product lines towards the more of the electronics, which is in turn Esdm. Thank you. Let me just turn this question to Mr. Ramesh. How do you see, you have been in EMS, expanding your businesses, expanding your clientage across. How do you see, the government and industry both is supporting the Esdm?
Thank you, Sanjeev ji. What I'm going to tell most of the points my other co-panelists have covered, but however, development of supply chain is essential for manufacturing of electronic products with higher domestic value addition. it is very, very important that even if we import, we need to add domestic value addition. The vision to position India as a global hub for electronic system design and manufacturing by encouraging and driving capabilities in the country for developing core components, including chipsets, creating an enabling environment for industry to compete globally is slowly coming true. Having said that, already with various schemes like specs coupled with selective increased import tariffs, there has been increase in manufacturing of mobiles from India. In fact, India, due to these initiatives, is slowly seeing even exports starting to happen. This indeed is a great achievement. Similar boost is now being initiated through PLI scheme to bareboard, through to Aircon. Discussions are on for automotive, wearables, etc., which further is going to ensure increased localization and import substitution. Government of India initiatives will go a long way in developing vibrant component and manufacturing ecosystem, which is vital for overall long-term and sustainable growth of electronic manufacturing in India. But all the Government of India initiatives as of now, in my view, are targeting on big companies. We need to work on MSMEs. They are our bread earners. They generate employment. They are large GDP contributors. But they are all stuck with access to funds, as well as they have been deprived of the schemes which are coming through. I think we should all work towards strongly recommending to Government of India to consider them as phase 2, and even smaller companies. Otherwise, what will happen is, here and there, bigger companies will grow. The PLI schemes are all getting controlled by only 10, 20 companies. The program has to be a little more wider, in my view, which will help us to take the country big. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Absolutely on the dot in terms of the attention point of view. Yes, indeed, the initiatives of the government and the industry participation is there, but it is largely looking at more of a big organizations, as we see right now in the numbers. How do we broadband this approach towards more of an MSME is an area where we definitely look into and focus upon. Esdm, as a policy perspective, and I just wanted to give an input to you from I've seen a couple of state government policies, including Karnataka's policy, very, very detailed. It provides a benefit for MSMEs. And somehow what I also feel is that the knowledge and awareness of these policies is not reaching to the larger industrial community as well. So I think the another element that we need to look into is to drive a very outreach program of the policies to industry aware. And the second one is people shy away. There are a lot of cumbersome process to define to get the benefits from the government. So how do we pick up an element of making a process much more easily available? There's no like a cumbersome process of documentation which takes away the entire energy. So I think there are A, outreach, B is the process, and C is quick results, right? Okay, everything is approved, the money will come after 1 year. Now that's not going to happen. You need to have this, outreach, a process, and the turnaround time in terms of taking it much shorter. But having said this, there are policies here. On the larger scale, I think your point is very well taken. The MSc really push forward for this. Let me just pick up this lens towards Dr. Sriram. Sir, how do you see the industry? Yes, Mr. Ramesh, you're saying something?
Before that, can I have one small point? I think the larger companies are always having the companies who are practicing how to get these schemes sanctioned to them by methods of processing the papers. So we have to encourage the MSMEs and others also to have smaller companies. We should look at more accounting companies to get into consulting roles and helping the companies so that the processes are put in place and things can happen, in my view, so that people don't shy out to get into this.
Correct. Completely agree.
Yeah. I find companies like us all are getting into the bigger roles, so it is easy. But what about the smaller companies? If they don't take our roles where we were, and if the very small companies take the MSME role, then the growth will not happen. Second is, EMS is not part of the specs or the PLI. Whereas EMS is something which is a necessity of the day. So there are very small EMSs in and around Tier 1 cities which need to be boosted up so that the country's manufacturing. Today I am completely talking from the angle of how do we boost the manufacturing. So that is the only point. So what are the bottlenecks they are having? If we can ease it out, I think it will be easy for them also to get into the next level. Thank you.
Got it. Absolutely agree. EMS is a challenge from the policy perspective as well. But I think what you become is that if we provide some support element to the MSMEs to avail the policy benefit, that will really help the industry to participate more into this. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Let me just turn around to Ms. Dr. Sriram. Yes, over to you, sir.
No, I completely agree with Mr. Ramesh. I think we need to support that. Let me shift gears a little bit and talk something slightly different perspective basis. When I was talking to a Taiwanese gentleman some time back, he's a leader. He's leading a key industry, electronics industry in India, and I'm sharing his perspectives. He says, "Look, PLI is good, and before that you had other schemes, MSIPs, etc. Those are all very good, but how do you convince the Taiwanese component maker to come to India and say, look, your money is safe, the political policies are going to be quite stable. Next 10 years, 15 years, you can come safely and invest in this country." Who's doing that talking to people? Because whatever said and done, I mean, you have to rely on them at least for the next few years to come and set up, component infrastructure, or even somebody is talking about setting up a foundry, etc. So I think we need to. PLI is a good start, but we need to take it to the next level by saying, look, this is what is India. This is why your money is safe in India. This is the opportunity space that we are looking at. I just spoke about it in my previous section. See, the penetration of electronics in different segments is so small now. It's completely, a field that is completely open for anybody to come in. So who is doing this hard sell of India?
I would like to thank
the Indian
Mr. K.
Krishnamurthy,
CEO and President IESA for inviting me to speak in this session at the 16th edition of the IESA Vision Summit. The last time I had an opportunity to speak at the IESA Summit was at Bangalore in 2015. I was pretty impressed by the role that IESA was playing and the platform that it provides to help bring so many of us from the electronics ecosystem together. It feels great to join you again for this summit,
PLI
and
is
I
a
do
great
echo
scheme. It
your
kind
firm
of
belief
opens up
that this will be the deciding decade
everybody's
for
eyes to
India's
India. But I think
ESDM
long
industry.
term, if we have to have
That said,
sustained
let me introduce
investments in
myself.
India
I
on
am
component
Randeep Singh Kokar from Tata
ecosystem,
Motors.
we need
I
to go
head the
sell
electrical
this
and electronics
to
engineering
especially the
for
Taiwanese, Japanese, and the Chinese. That their money is safe. It's a place where you can put your money for 15 years, forget it, you'll get a return on it, because this is the opportunity space that we are looking at. And as aspirations grow in India, I think this is the market is just fertile to grow. I think who is doing this hard sell with these countries? Obviously, many of these companies, many of these countries, India is partly known country or relatively unknown country. How are we going to go and sell? This gentleman actually told me, look, you guys come to a seminar, you do a general purpose presentation about India and walk away. It doesn't work that way. You have to go to individual companies and sell this concept of India, and that their money is safe and they can put money on the ground, to individual companies and go really have deep conversations. A PLI scheme is a good start, but it's not the end of everything, So I think that's my off view on this. We have great opportunity, like I just said. Our population aspirers are going to keep going up. We have more than 1 billion people who aspire. I think we didn't even talk about the bottom, 200 million or so families that are still there, that will come up as our GDP grows. So great opportunity for countries. How are we selling it? That's really my question. PLI is a great start, but how are we going to take it to the next level? This is probably a challenge for both the industry and the government. So that's how much I had to say. Yeah.
Again, I am so happy that the panelists are picking up the right dots which need to be addressed. I just second your thought, because in my last 2 months of interaction with some of the other industry players, I will not take the name of a state and neither the name of a company, but a company from the US was actually investing in one state, and because of the turmoil and instability, it has got into where we say that, can we shift from here to there, right? So, and the confusion goes, and this message goes to other companies in US, right? How do you control that? But the second part is that the organizations in Karnataka, especially, like for example, the initiative of the government of Karnataka towards Karnataka Digital Economy Mission, setting up facilities like Lahari and Meso. These are examples on which you have those hand-holding and the confidence building and picking up the bridging of the gap between the industry and the government is handled by these organizations. So it becomes easier for us to, and I'm very happy to share with you that this is something like we are on the, I would say none other state has this other than Karnataka, but I think more of the state will definitely come out with these initiatives in going forward. But the point taken, if you want to sell, we need to have a deeper conversation on the stability parameters and etc. We have very limited time now left. I think Mr. Stivraj, if your point of view quickly, and then just one white I need to pick up, and then we can have a Q&A later.
Yeah, I think I would like to just mention quick one thing, right? So just looking at how Israel and Singapore is doing, what China is doing on the semiconductor side, right? We can just take some clue, and the policy making has to happen, through these experts who have seen this industry. The industry experts need to be there to make the policies, and we don't need to today think about very hundreds of billions of dollars investment in the semiconductor alone. I can say test assembly, very pre and post fab support. There are so many areas where if this industry is going to grow double in next 8 years, whatever growth we have seen last 50 years is going to happen next 8 years. We need to see this $1 trillion opportunity and pick up the areas where there are gaps, and we have a talent. There is no doubt that all technical experts within top MNCs are from India, IITs, right? So we need to take that clue, involve these guys, and really understand what are the gap areas where we can jump in and fill up that gap. That itself will become huge opportunity for India. That's what I can say.
Thank you. We have very limited time. Just one short question, 30 seconds each of you. One challenge that you see that we need to address to reach to $300 billion ESDM achieve my milestone. one challenge. What is the one challenge? Because I want to note down these challenges, put up a small document, and go back to the government and say, help us, go back to the industry and say, help us to remove these challenges. Sanjeev ji, over to you. One challenge.
So the biggest challenge for ESDM sector is about the local value addition. Currently, it is less than 20%. So when we are talking about $400 billion industry, if we continue to work at 20% or less local value addition, it is going to be the biggest challenge for our sector. What contributes to value? Components contributes 40%, your IP technology contributes 30 to 40%, and EMS or manufacturing contributes around 15%. Today, entire focus is on manufacturing. What we have to do is develop product and innovation companies, support startups. Our success rate of startups is very low. How we can improve the success rate of startup so that more and more IP patents can be filed out of India and IP value can be recognized of India. Coming to components, always we talk about semiconductor manufacturing, but there are low-hanging fruits like passive components, connectors, displays, inductors, transformers. Why can't we focus on those sectors first, which doesn't call for $4 to $5 billion investment? So challenge is value addition, and we must try to improve.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Girish.
I think one of the challenges that we see is, we have companies who develop the technologies, we have companies who design the products, but what we're seeing is one of the gaps is having the ecosystem to transition those from the design to manufacturing. Not just, it doesn't have to always be, the 8 nanometer, the 20 nanometer high-end products, but like Sanjeev ji talked about, the other go-betweens, the passives, we design all of them. We develop the manufacturing process for them, but then we don't manufacture, it goes to somewhere else, like a country like Malaysia to manufacture. And that is something that I think we can focus on, is to help enhance that ecosystem, get the people in all the technical training institutes to do more hands-on work rather than just read off the books. And that is something that would really give confidence to a lot of companies to actually come in and put money. I think this is something we look at in terms of creation of this, bridging this gap between the two.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Girish. Mr. Ramesh, quick, your bite on one challenge.
Actually, what Mr. Girish has told is right. We are not having skills in conceptual design of hardware. Timely products don't come. So what happens? Manufacturing, if it has to pick up more and more, design and development has to happen. So we should harness and encourage talents for conceptual design and incubating and developing startups, especially in areas like medical, telecom sectors, industrial sectors. When we are talking about IoT, everybody is talking about IoT. This we need to do.
Correct. No, I completely agree. And I was just looking at the numbers, 3,000 jobs are available for VLSI's kind of design skills manpower. There is no manpower available to be hired. Right? Jobs are there, but no people are there. Dr. Sriram.
Yeah, I think this has been my favorite topic. Last meeting I had in another association. I think we have to set the ball rolling on R&D investment. I don't think as a country we still rely on the Taiwanese to set up shop in India, the Chinese to set up shop in India. I think we have to earmark a certain percentage of our profits for R&D. I think that will pay off. I think we are a cerebral people in any case. So we have the brains. The startup ecosystem and others are helping, but I think we need real, major corporates getting into the act of investing in research and development. That's quickly my view.
Thank you. Thank you. This is very critical. In-house R&D development projects and also aligning with the startups, nothing like it. That can just scale up exponentially. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Shivraji, last bite of yours.
Maybe I would suggest that Government of India should really work closely with the IITs. We have a super talent. We just need to connect them to the industry, and all IIT, innovation or whatever they are doing their project or their research has to be very, very coupled with what is required in the industry. And that partnership can really help. And there are already tons of challenges industry can, give it to the academia. So government has to fund it and enable the live projects for them, live research with the academia. I think that will help and really clear the ways to different areas and see where are the gaps, and then we can jump in. The rest of the things will happen definitely. I think industry academia collaboration and clear funding from the government of India on these critical areas, long-term critical areas is important.
Lovely. There's so much to talk on these topics, gentlemen. You have been so good to us. Thank you so much for this time. But let me take a pause here. We'll open this floor for Q&A sessions, and then we pick up, some of the pointers from the Q&A, and then we summarize it at the end of the session today. Thank you so much. Let's take a pause here. Thank you so much for this kind.
Thank you so much for the wonderful discussion by the panel. We do have a few questions from the audience. So since it's late, I would ask the panel if they're okay to take the questions from the audience. Is it okay?
Yeah, I think we can take few.
We can take a few. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So we actually have quite a bit of audience still on the platform, just so that you know. So even though it's late in the evening, the first question was around how regional ESDM ecosystem should collaborate with each other. This is one of the points that was not directly addressed, but what can the regional ESDM ecosystem or ESDM cluster or EMC clusters do to work together to accelerate growth of the ecosystem in India? This is one of the questions from the audience.
Can I take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, two things are very important in this aspect of regional ecosystem development. First and foremost is creating a good data bank of all the IPs and technologies available across various design houses, various ODMs across India. Because many times what happens, some device driver or some algorithms are already developed, and rather than collaborating and reducing the design development cycle time, we try to reinvent the wheel. So time to market is the most important thing. And if we really create an IP data bank, then the regional ecosystem will be benefited hugely by leveraging collaborative approach between different design houses and ODMs. Secondly, the manufacturing ecosystem of EMS as well as the OEMs. Many times I have seen that people really don't have the visibility of all the EMS options or manufacturing options available locally, a good understanding of component ecosystem available in India. So these are 2-3 things which will definitely help in regional collaboration and will help the sector.
Thank you. I think just to take that thought along the line, I think also in terms of startups and other innovators, having a library or data bank of IPs and a component ecosystem will actually help accelerate their not only time to market, but also in terms of product development, prototyping, etc. On a similar line, Sanjeev, just wanted to check with you. What about component banks? Do we need to have component banks where frequently used components can be made available to some of these clusters so that they can experiment, even if it is academia, for example? This question has come up a couple of times. So any of you, could you please throw some light on what you think about that?
I will quickly add a point here that see, when you are doing a prototyping or you are doing a pilot production, okay, you have a need of short lead time and you cannot buy really the MPQ, SPQ offered by distributor. But the online ecosystem available like DigiKey, Mouser, Element 14, RS component, they support you through courier, even 1 piece or 5 piece. So I think when you are doing a prototyping or pilot production, you can leverage this online distributor ecosystem already available. But it's a good initiative to have a local sample component bank centrally somewhere, which can be leveraged by startups. That will be a great help.
Thank you.
So maybe I will add on the semiconductor chip side, right? So like, other system level in the chip side, we need standard cell libraries, memories, GPIOs, some of the components, you can say, in terms of the analog building blocks, which are silicon proven. A lot of ecosystem, startups are there who are building their own IPs. I think if there is effort to consolidate and have those libraries and those standard cells memories and the IOs available, then we can quickly put this together and build the SoC. I think this is similar approach as we build it electronic system to the SoC level, chip level.
Thank you, sir.
So yeah, Sunil, one thing I would like to add here. Yeah, we talked about components, right? One other thing a lot of us or a lot of startups face is the high cost of, say, debuggers. If they have to buy professional debuggers, it's pretty expensive. So maybe something there where IESA or an similar organization could invest, and you could rent it out. They need it for a specific amount of time, could be rented out, which I think will also help development costs come down. And secondly, they will be able to get into designing and developing more complex systems, because a lot of the free ones that come with the software from the semiconductor manufacturers may not be able to solve a lot of complex issues. So this is maybe something we can also look at. Yeah, something that should be looked at, I think.
No, it's a very good suggestion, Girish. And by the way, Software Technology Park of India, STPI Bangalore, has set up IoT Open Lab in Electronic City. It has all the development tools. It has all the popular samples of component and all the test equipment available. So startup can avail this STPI IoT Open Lab facility at Electronic City, Bangalore.
Yeah. So taking up this question is actually for Mr. Ramesh Kannan, but since he's not here right now, I'm sure one of you can answer, because there were a couple of questions for him. One is, he mentioned during the discussion that the government schemes don't necessarily trickle down or not contextual to MSMEs. That was a very important point that he mentioned. And he also mentioned how important MSMEs are actually to develop this ecosystem, because it is generally what will eventually power, even if you look at from a GDP perspective. So what is missing, you think, from a government standpoint? I mean, all of the large PLI schemes are being consumed perhaps by some of the larger corporations. And it is very difficult. I think Mr. Kannan also mentioned that, you should have accounting firms. And I think Sanjeev or one of you mentioned that there's a lot of paperwork. And I think it was Sanjeev also mentioned that by the time that the funds or the capabilities available to the MSME, it's a year and above, which doesn't make any sense. So Sanjeev, you have had a lot of experience in dealing with the government. What are some of the policies which can be made more MSME relevant, especially for the Esdm industry?
It's really a challenge today that all the PLI schemes are targeted for the large companies and multinationals. It is very difficult for MSME to participate into those PLI program or any other government schemes today. So we have to figure out a separate criteria and structure for MSME sector. Secondly, when it comes to government tendering, the entry barriers for participating in those tenders, like you have to have so much of turnover, you must have so many years of experience. So all these barriers, MSME could not able to participate into government tenders where they have a capability and they have a products to cater to those opportunities. So there is a critical need to think MSME separately, come up with policies to support MSME sector.
Absolutely. There's one more question here. This is related to, again, the supply chain. I think, again, one of you during the discussion mentioned the need for the industry to actually look at adding higher domestic value addition and creating products which cater to the global market and not get consumed by focusing purely on the market. So what is missing, you think? Because I think some of you in the panel also mentioned that there's plenty of talent, there's a lot of innovation happening. All of this is happening, but at the end of the day, in terms of value add, especially when you look at from an MSME standpoint, considering some of the, I would say, handicaps we're having, because the government schemes are not applicable, capital infusion is not there. I think one of you also mentioned the need for market access. And earlier in the day, we had a discussion with Mr. Rajendra Velvukudi, who is the CEO for Cyient, and he mentioned the challenges that MSME face, especially in strategic electronics. So a lot of things, but again, I think this panel was discussing how to grow the ecosystem. So any thoughts on that? Is a question.
I can definitely, this is a topic of my passion and my interest. I left my corporate career and focused on advocacy and advisory firm just to support a building high value added ecosystem in India. So as I mentioned in my last point, that in any value chain of electronics product, 40% value is in components that we are missing today completely, because we are importing more than 90% components. So we are missing 40% value. Next 30 to 40% value is in IP and technology. Though we have a great talent, but that talent is working either in a captive design center of a global company or as a design services. There are very few successful product local companies. So to really build a high value added ecosystem, we have to at least utilize this talent to develop local product innovation, local startups, and make them successful. Today, biggest challenge is our startup success rate is very low, and how we can really improve that so that the IP value can be recognized locally. That is first and foremost thing. Again, semiconductor fab is required, but developing the component manufacturing ecosystem for other low cost passive components, connectors, and bare PCB is equally important. That may give us 8 to 10% local value addition. So we should focus on that. Today, the entire focus is on only manufacturing part. People are getting CKD kit of mobile phones or CKD kits of all consumer electronic product and doing only the assembly work in India, which gives 8 to 10% value addition. So if we have to move up on value chain, component manufacturing ecosystem and IP technology creation are the most critical requirement in India.
This question was around the automotive industry, so I guess that would be Mr. Girish. The question was, what do companies like Infineon do to enable the startup ecosystem? And I think there was some discussion around EV. So what is Infineon doing? Do you look at partners in the MSME sector? Are there suppliers, or how would a large MNC like Infineon foster the MSME ecosystem in India? Because at the end of the day, value addition and innovation. So I guess that would be Mr. Malash. The question was, what do companies like Infineon?
Yeah, so now what I can tell you is companies are like Infineon, right? We are trying to do a lot of enablement of the ecosystem. For example, we develop proof of concepts. Okay, could be different products. For example, we have a full-fledged lab in Pune where we develop proof of concepts for two-wheeler, three-wheeler EVs, inverters, BMS. And what we do is once we develop this proof of concepts, this is something that we can then share. Either we can share the Gerber files with the startups, or we can actually even lend them the hardware that we have developed. And this hardware can then be used by these startups to start their development. So they don't have to start from scratch. And we also give them, software that we have developed in our labs. These are not software that are productionable, or the device we could say is about tier 1.5, which means it's not something that's a tier 1 for them to go into production, but something that we've developed proof of concepts that we can share, and they can then use this to start their development. They don't have to start from scratch, and we will be able to provide them technical support. And what we've also done is enabled some of our key distribution partners, and they also have the knowledge and technology that they can further support. So for example, we go into the core and mass market segment. Yeah, they don't have access to all the big players. And this is something that they can reach out to us, and we will connect them with either our distribution partners, or we can directly work with them. So definitely that is something that we are doing. More, you talked about the e-mobility space, mostly on the 2 and 3 wheelers, because passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles are all handled by the big boys. Yeah, there's really not much that they would be able to do in there.
We have just 2 more questions, and I think Dr. Sriram joined in at the right time. You made a comment that industries should earmark percentage of their profits for R&D investments. Are you talking about large corporations, or are you talking about the government doing something? Or just to can you elaborate on that point? If you recall the discussion, you mentioned this. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Sunil, for that question. I don't want to state any percentage. I got into real big trouble last time I did that. So I just leave it to the individual companies to decide what works for them. But I think even if it is 0.1%, I want them to start earmarking something from their bottom line for R&D expenditure, because in the long run it'll all accumulate and it'll give, because see, government is doing its part, it's giving us PLI incentives, etc. So companies can decide a part of it should go into R&D because we are really investing for the future. I'm not saying, I'm not going to prescribe that it should be an X percentage, but whatever works for you, and I think we should also petition the government saying, more and more of our CSR funds should be treated, R&D expenditure should be treated as CSR, because they are already allowing that you can push some of your CSR funds to IIT incubation centers, etc. So I think in-house R&D, if it's a recognized one, then we should be able to, at least a part of the CSR funds can be recognized as being spent on R&D. I think this is something that companies and government have to work together on. It may be a very, very loosely stated thing at this point in time. I haven't also crystallized my thoughts on this. But I think as IESA going forward, we should crystallize our thoughts around this and actually go back to the government and say, look, this is one great way that companies can earmark a certain percentage of their profits for R&D, and this is what will sustain us after 10 years, as new technologies develop. I think I restate the same point I made yesterday. I made in the forum that, look, we are a very cerebral nation, and there is no dearth of genius and intelligence in this country. I think, when are we going to leverage that? And that needs some capex, that needs some funding. So that's all I'm asking for. I'm not going to get into percentages because last time I got into big trouble, but whatever works for you.
Yeah, I think the context also, Sriram, maybe even Sanjeev, you can. There's one last question for Mr. Shivraj Darne before I go there. I think the linkage here was someone from the MSME industry was asking. The question came from there. When you made the comment on percentage of profits, I think you were focusing more on setting the company up for the future, that kind of stuff. But I think Sanjeev, maybe you want to go ahead. Is there some benefit an MSME can get by making contributions towards R&D, whether it's a tax rebate, an incentive? I guess the question came more from there. So of course we can elaborate. But Mr. Shivraj, there was a question on the supply chain, because I think there was a mention of supply chain from a component and a systems perspective by Mr. Ramesh Khanna. But from a manufacturing perspective, if you had a chance to see one of the earlier panels that happened day one of the NISA summit, there was a discussion around whether India can play a role. The Indian industry can play a role in becoming suppliers to the global fabs and ATMPs, whether it is materials, equipment, services. Any thoughts on this? Because when we scan the ecosystem, we do find that there are many industries which are consuming chemicals, metals, minerals. Perhaps they are not at the semiconductor grade, but is there a possibility? Second data point that we had was, we understand that SCL is already sourcing materials to 25% of their materials locally. So is there an opportunity for the Indian industry, especially MSMEs and others, who can start exporting raw materials like chemicals, gases, minerals, to support the growing number of fabs which are being set up, or even ATMPs? There are 18 new fabs announcements which have come. Is there an opportunity for India, you think?
Absolutely. I think if I just know about the GF Global Foundry, how much gases they need and a lot of other material they need, I think there is a huge opportunity, because cost-wise we can definitely be very competitive compared to the world, and the supply chain that they create for all these raw materials required, and it is not just one time, it is a continuous supply required, right? So we have now invested in Singapore, Germany we have invested. So I think in Asia, at least the Global Foundry has a presence, and of course in Taiwan, TSMC, right? So I think there is a great opportunity in the Asian region to really look at what are the raw materials required in the factory, including even wafer, right? Wafer fab, right? Wafer creation. So I think there is a definite opportunity. This is not something would be impossible for India to do. Only thing is that we need to find out, earmark few things that we can do in the beginning, and just have a good connection with these multinational companies, and definitely we can beat in terms of price, quality, and rest of the things. I feel that there is opportunity, because now industry is going to double in next 10 years. That is true. Whatever development happen in 50 years, if that is going to happen in next 10 years, we have a tremendous opportunity to supply that. That was a great.
So just for your information, Mr. Darne, the ISA is coming out with a report specifically studying what are the global requirements around equipment, services, and minerals. And the report will baseline the Indian capability, what is required globally, and what it takes from a strategic standpoint over the next 5 years. So with that, I'd like to, my question bank is exhausted. There are no questions, but it's pretty late in the evening. Thank you very much for all your patience. And apologize for the delay. It was mostly logistical, and there were some programs which ran over. We couldn't control respect. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time you've spent. I think the panel discussion was very illuminating. I'm sure the recordings will be available for the MSME segment and the other industry players to leverage. And also, I think the question and answers were useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil.
Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Hope you have a nice evening. We will connect with you later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Life moves fast. In order to keep up with the challenges of today, intelligence is key.
Thank you all. We are coming to the end of the session today. This is the first day of the Vision Summit, the third day as far as the curtain raiser and the summit goes. To summarize, we've had a great day with lots of keynotes, very illuminating panel discussions, and policymakers talking to us and indicating their total support. Most of the panels, as well as the keynote speakers, have been very upbeat about the opportunity for India. Even the concluding panel has been very illuminating and also encouraging for the Indian ecosystem. So thank you all for your patience. We have a very packed day tomorrow. We are going to have several keynotes, multiple panels, as well as our government speakers coming in and talking to us about policy. We have the Finance Minister of India, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, who is going to be coming in live around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. We've also got several ministers who are going to come and address. They're going to share their perspectives from a government standpoint. And also we have several panels around the startup and the MSME ecosystem. To top and end the day tomorrow, we have panels from dynamic Indian ESDM leaders in discussion, both around technology and business strategy. So we look forward to all of you attending the summit tomorrow. Thank you for being there today and hope you have a nice evening.